I'm Joe Kurtenbach with Guns and Ammo, and I'm joined by Chris Johnson from FN. And Chris, you guys are making a splash here at SHOT Show 2022. You guys have brought back the high power.
Indeed we have. So we're excited to introduce the new FN High Power new for 2022. It's a reimagined, reimagined high power. We took a lot of energy and effort to make sure that we were including the core elements that make a high power, but updating it for today's shooter standards.
Yeah, it's important to mention right off the bat, these are not, the compatibility is not there with legacy models of the high power. You're going to have different magazines and tons of different features, which we'll get into. But it's worth noting, though, that this isn't just bringing back the same old high power. You guys have really developed a new platform inspired by and paying homage to the original high powers.
Yep, absolutely. This is not a replica at all. Frankly, if we want to do a replica, we could have done it 5 years ago.
Yeah.
We commissioned a pretty lengthy historical design study to make sure that we kind of identified, what is it that really makes a high power, and then say, all right, how do we take those, kind of honor and respect, what is it that makes a high power, but then update it respectfully.
Well, let's start there then. What does make a high power, and FN, of all companies, should know?
Yep. Yep, certainly. So, one of the things is, obviously, if you just look at the overall shape and design of it, it certainly has that John Browning influence, just geometrically, kind of the way it looks. Mm-hmm. The slide arm on the back side of the gun here, it has the long slide arm, slide release arm, so that's a key characteristic. The keyhole muzzle that you see up front here.
Yeah, absolutely.
The shape of the grip, the hammer, these are all kind of things that we identified in that design study to say, we have to include these in the high power design.
So, building on top of that original high power design, how have you guys made the new high powers different and maybe more appropriate for today's shooter?
Yeah, sure thing. So one of the things we've done is we spent a lot of time on ergonomics. We spent a ton of time contouring the grip, making it so where it really just kind of pulls your hand in and kind of improves the control and confidence of the shooter. Another thing we did too is capacity for today's shooters are also something we wanted to take into consideration. The original high power was a 13-round magazine, which in the 1920s and 30s when it was developed, revolutionary at the time. This features a 17-round magazine.
Yeah,
so
that is definitely a lot more capacity and much more on par with what you would expect from a service-sized pistol today.
Yes, sir.
Let's talk for a second about the grips, because these are nice and slim. I feel like the original high powers sometimes felt a little bit wide-bodied.
Sure.
Despite having a 13-round magazine, this feels like a slimmer gun to me in the hand.
Well, it's dimensionally it's similar, but yes, we put pretty thin grips on here. Again, spent a ton of time working on the contouring of the grip. We wanted to make sure that, ergonomically, if you're an experienced shooter or an intro shooter, that you felt confident shooting, this metal frame gun. We do have different grip options, so each gun comes with obviously a set of grips on the gun, but then there's a different color set of grips that come in the box, so you can customize it right out the box. And if those don't work for you, we've got G10 grips in about 5 different colors, and then oak grips and walnut grips as well.
So definitely you guys are starting right off the bat allowing people to personalize their high power. And there's other features in here too. You look at the sights, these look familiar, coming from the 509 family.
Yep, absolutely. So the sights are actually, they're designed for the high power, but one of the interesting things is that we use the dovetail cut that's on the 509 family. So if these aren't your thing, or you would prefer, something 3-dot, night sights, fiber optics, there's an aftermarket already built for it.
And that's not something you can say about the original high power in terms of the sights. That was typically a gunsmithing job if you wanted to change them out.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So looking at one of the first questions people are going to ask, and I touched on it, that magazine release. Here or not here?
Yeah, so there is no magazine disconnect in here. So that's one of the things in the older high power. It gave it kind of a mushy, heavy trigger. This breaks at about 4.5 pounds. It's a smooth single action, good reset and everything.
Yeah.
So if you're familiar with shooting older high powers, it's going to feel a lot different.
And I will say too, the controls are pretty ambidextrous. We got the safety on both sides as well as the slide, stop, and release. But if I'm not mistaken, the takedown lever looks a little different to me.
Well, there's a takedown lever now. So yeah, a good catch. So one of the things that we've done too to update this for the modern standards is, the older high power, it would, you would have to basically drop the magazine, lock the slide back, and then push a pin through
Right.
that was attached to the slide lever to basically pull it apart. And then when you had to put it back together, it was kind of cumbersome to make sure everything was lined up just right. So what we've done here is drop the magazine, turn this little lever here, and then basically the gun comes apart in 2 pieces for field stripping,
Yeah.
cleaning, oiling, and then getting back to shooting.
And I think for today's shooters, maybe people that didn't come up on the high powers of the 1911s, this is going to be a much more familiar assembly, if you will. I mean, the components that you expect to see on your other, maybe even polymer frame guns like the 509, you're going to get the same thing here. You take the slide all the way off,
Yep.
and you get the barrel and the recoil spring with it.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely.
Wow. I mean, it is really a nice looking gun, a lot of options right out of the gate, and it's great to see kind of that legendary high power come back in a very modern form. If people want to find out more about the high power, where do they need to go?
So you can find out more about the FN High Power and all of our great products at fnamerica.com.
Thank you so much, Chris. Appreciate it.
Thanks.